Week 15, Sunday NFL breakdowns, all the information you need to know based on coverage data, run scheme metrics, and overall logistical information for your fantasy teams, as well as your higher or lower projections. If you've never been here before, welcome. My name is Max, or Loeb's Leads, and I make these every single week for the biggest games on Sunday, every Thursday night game, and every Monday night game. I know a lot of you guys have been here before. If you're back, welcome. Make sure you like this video. But if you're new, make sure you subscribe and join the family. We've been doing picks. We've been doing fantasy lineups all year long, helped a ton of people out, and we are on the road to 10K. I think we're going to hit it by the end of the week, guys. So if you're not part of that family, make sure you do. Helps me out a lot. And if you enjoy the content, again, make sure you like this video. Lets me know you enjoy this content. This video, again, if you've never been here before, we go in depth for 4 specific games. The 4 games we're going in depth for, timestamps will be below, are Miami, Houston, Buffalo, Detroit, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and Green Bay, Seattle. But we're still going to talk about every single game, just a little bit brief, more brief with each of the other games, and that will be at the end again. Timestamps below, but also below, you can see there's some crucial links. If you guys want my picks for these games, you need to make sure you're tapped into these links and following on 2 socials. I'm going to show you really quick. Number 1, Instagram. This is where my favorite player picks will be. In each game, I'm going to go through like 3 or 4 picks that I like. On my Instagram, it will be a set of like 5 or 6 picks I like the most out of all the ones I'm going to talk about tonight. You have to make sure you're tapped in and following on Instagram if you're not already. That is the number 1 place to get all of my stuff. The best place. Now, if you're looking for some more fun picks, first touchdowns, anytime touchdowns, obscure touchdown scores, as well as some less research back picks, just stuff I'm throwing together, got to make sure you're following me on X. Again, link below. But if you want some free cash to make your picks with on these sites, Sleeper, Underdog, and Better Picks are all going to give you special offers after you join with code LEADS, L-E-A-D-S, and deposit at least $10. Sleeper is going to give you a free half-yard pick plus 11 free entries after that. And then Underdog is going to give you a deposit bonus up to $1,000, as well as that free half-yard pick as well. Better Pick is going to give you a free half completion pick and a $200 deposit match. So if you're not on any of these sites, it's free cash on all of them. You just have to join with code LEADS and again, deposit $10 and you're good to go. Without further ado though, guys, let's get into these games. We're going to start with Miami, Houston. Now, in these games, what we do is we break down with the data outliers, some aspects of these defenses that they're struggling in that leads us to believe certain players are going to overperform. Now, important information about this. Houston Texans just put today, Friday, depending on when you're seeing this, but Friday, just put Jalen Petrie on IR, so he's out. Azeez Al-Shaair is obviously suspended, so he's out. That defense is taking a toll. Now, Houston's defense already very, very good against the run. How Petrie and Al-Shaair being out affects that, we wait to see, but they're giving up the 10th fewest rush yards per game, as well as the 5th fewest running back receptions and running back receiving yards. Now, they're good in the pass game against tight ends. Fewest tight end receptions, 2nd fewest tight end yards, but they give up the 7th most wide receiver yards allowed. Now, they're middle of the pack in terms of overall wide receiver receptions, but when we go look at the overall passing numbers against these Houston Texans, we'll put this up real quick. You can see, scroll down a little bit here, right? 220.6. That's the 26th worst. So 7th best in the NFL against the pass. Now, when they allow targets, the rates they're allowing targets, it goes out wide and in the slot if you really want to look at it like that. But not allowing a ton of targets to inline tight ends, actually the fewest in the NFL. And then out of the backfield, 20th in the NFL. 3rd highest out wide target rate, though. That's the most important thing. In terms of overall coverage, what Houston does, it's really difficult to get a beat. They have the 15th most zone. They're pretty balanced with zone and man. And the Dolphins don't have a true out wide route runner. Waddle runs the most routes from out wide, but Tyreek Hill is a little more productive running routes from out wide and still runs a good amount. But here's the thing that I noticed. Houston Texans run the 3rd most cover 4, and they run a decent amount of cover 6 as well. Anytime that the Miami Dolphins have played a team that's top half in the NFL in cover 4 rate, there were 3 games. 3 games with Tua, 3 games with Tua. There were 4 overall, but 3 with Tua. It was the Jets, who I kind of want to take with a grain of salt because they were pretty man-heavy. Tyreek Hill had 10 for 155. Arizona, in that top half of cover 4 teams, Tyreek Hill had 6 for 72. Buffalo, in that top half of cover 4 teams, Tyreek Hill had 4 for 80. Right now, his projection is 69 yards. Nice. It's 69 yards. I go look at that and I look at the overall production in terms of yards the Texans are allowing, and I like Tyreek Hill receiving yards. I don't know if it's going to come on a big play against zone, against man, but cover 4, Tyreek Hill seems to be the guy. And I would have leaned Jalen Waddle if he didn't put up an absolute dud and stinker against Buffalo the second time around, 2 for -4 yards. You guys remember that, but I'm pretty sure he scored in that game too. So Tyreek Hill on that side is what I'm looking at. But the play of the year, guys, I don't know if I want to say play of the year. Play of the week. This is the play of the week. This is the pick I like the most for sure. Is on the other side. We'll get into Miami's defense if you don't want a kicker prop. But Ka'imi Fairbairn, guys. Ka'imi Fairbairn. The Miami Dolphins are allowing the most field goal attempts in the NFL. Why? They have the 4th best red zone defense. They stop teams. They play a lot of zone. We'll talk about the zone and stuff in a second, but 4th most zone in the NFL, most middle field open. They play a lot of zone. Bend, don't break. Can Houston get them to break? Probably not with the 5th worst red zone offense in the NFL. Now, Ka'imi Fairbairn, in terms of games where he's made 2+ field goals, remember they're kicking in a dome. They're at Houston too, which is huge. He's 9 for 13. He's had 9 games where he's kicked 2+ field goals, 4 where he has not. 2 of those 4 misses came when the Houston Texans had all their pass catchers healthy, when they were better in the red zone. So really looking at the Texans offense now, he's really 9 for 11 when it comes to those 2+ field goal made games with the current offensive set they have now. I love my chances there, especially because Miami's stopping teams in the red zone. Houston's not great in the red zone. Ka'imi Fairbairn, 2+ field goals is my favorite pick on the slate. Truthfully, my favorite pick on the slate. I know I told you guys, make sure you go follow that Instagram below to see the rest of my picks. That one will 100% be on there. 100% be on there. Now, other information here. Miami has the 11th most receiving yards allowed. They're to running backs. 11th most receiving yards allowed to running backs. Middle of the pack in terms of receptions. They have the 5th fewest wide receiver yards allowed, but the 6th most tight end receptions, 13th most tight end yards. So if you really want to lean into Dalton Schultz and Joe Mixon receiving, you can. Like I said, Miami plays the 4th most zone in the NFL and the most middle field open. In terms of target rate, it goes Nico Collins, Joe Mixon, Tank Dell, Cade Stover, Dalton Schultz. Now, Stover has more yards per out run, but Schultz has more targets, more receptions against zone. So if you wanted to lean into tight ends, I'd probably still lean into Schultz unless Stover's number was wildly low, like single digits, which it could be. But if it's single digits, I don't mind it. I think Nico Collins, he has 3.46 yards per out run against zone. Miami plays a good amount of 2 and 4. He does really well against those. That deep post is really his specialty. So I like Nico Collins for a longest reception. But again, the Miami Dolphins are giving up the 5th fewest wide receiver yards overall in the NFL. I'm kind of going to stay away. The 2 picks I like in this game, like I talked about. I like Tyreek Hill receiving yards. I feel moderately comfortable there. Ka'imi Fairbairn, 2 field goals. I think that is absolutely the way you go in this game. Let's move to the second game, Buffalo-Detroit. And if you guys watched my video last week, I'm going to pull up the game log right now. You know exactly what I thought about Detroit's offense and what was going to happen. And the most confident pick of Thursday Night Football, not 2 days ago or whenever you're seeing this, but last week, that Packers Lions game was David Montgomery receiving, and we are going to go right back there again this week. We got the wrong thing here. Let's go game logs. You look at game logs for these running backs. Look at David Montgomery receiving. 5 for 33, 3 for 36, 3 for 36, 3 for 20, 1 for 24, 3 for 23, 1 for 5 here, but this is a very man-heavy team. 3 for 39, nothing against Dallas. 1 for 40 against Seattle. 3 for 17, 4 for 35, 1 for 2 against Rams in week 1. Buffalo, guys, 12th most rush yards allowed, 12th most rush attempts allowed, so there's going to be production on the ground. But the 3rd most receiving yards allowed to opposing running backs and the most receptions allowed to opposing running backs. When we break down the Packers for our 4th game here, you're going to see what I mean. It's super similar in terms of target rate and what they do in coverage. Coverage, the Buffalo Bills run the 9th most zone in the NFL. Now, important to note here, Goff has the 3rd most fantasy points per dropback against middle field open. Buffalo Bills run the 4th most middle field open in the entire NFL. So Goff should have a pretty good game. But you rank the Lions pass catchers by target rate against zone coverage. Guess who's number 1? David Montgomery. Most yards per out run. He has 28 targets and 28 receptions, guys, against zone. 28 targets, 28 receptions. David Montgomery receiving is another pick that I think, I don't want to guarantee anything, but I think will be on that Instagram slate Sunday. Love David Montgomery receiving for that reason alone. But again, this is also a thing where you look at the target rates where the Bills are getting targeted in the slot at the 2nd highest rate in the NFL. even though Detroit's not throwing to the slot a ton, I still like Amon-Ra St. Brown for a bounce back spot here. He's very good against zone. By far the most receptions, 2.23 yards per route run, 69 targets across the year. Like, he is still also a big zone guy there, so I do trust Amon-Ra St. Brown. And you can go look at some big game logs from Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, Tampa's a super zone-heavy team, 11 for 119. Arizona, decently zone-heavy, 7 for 75. Minnesota, extremely zone-heavy, 8 for 112. Green Bay, the first time around, 756. I know it was a little bit underwhelming, Green Bay the second time around. And then Indianapolis, 6 for 62. They don't allow a ton of slot targets, which is interesting. But zone heavy, Amon-Ra St. Brown does really well against zone. It's a specialty. I like him a lot. The big target increase, though, against zone was Tim Patrick. We saw the big game last week. So I don't mind getting on Tim Patrick again. But the number one thing I'm doing this week is getting on David Montgomery receiving again. Bills are being targeted out of the backfield at the highest rate in the NFL. Lions are throwing to the running back position at the 4th highest rate. Now, the explosive run numbers. We also talked about this last Thursday with Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs' longest run was, I think it was a first half catch, but it cashed last Thursday against the Packers. Look, very similar trajectory here, right? The Bills are much better against zone than they are against man gap. Lions are running more zone than they are man gap. And the Bills are better against zone than they are against man gap. So a little bit worse against man gap than against zone. But here's the thing. You look at the overall numbers. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get his touches. It may not be as much as David Montgomery, but he's going to get his touches. And the Bills give up the 6th most yards per carry to those man gap scheme runs. Gibbs and Montgomery both participate in each type of run a good amount. But when you look at the efficiency numbers in the man gap scheme runs, Jahmyr Gibbs is 1.25 yards per carry better than Montgomery. So he is ripping off bigger runs against or in those man gap scheme runs where the Bills are struggling. The Lions have the 5th highest explosive run percentage in the NFL, and the Bills have the 7th lowest explosive run percentage in the NFL, meaning they give up explosive runs at the 7th highest rate. Jahmyr Gibbs' longest rush here, I think, is another really good one. I think he rips off a big one. It doesn't have to be a 15-carry, 100-yard performance. We don't have to bank on that with Gibbs. We can bank on his talent, just ripping off a big run. My guess is right now I can pull it up on Underdog for you to see. But last time when they played Green Bay, it was like 15 or 16. If it's around that again, I like it a lot. We can pull that up real quick. And again, all these picks, click that link below. You can get them. But looking at that, pull this up real quick for you guys. Looking at the longest rush for Jahmyr Gibbs. Come on. Here we go. 16.5. So I love that. I love a 17-yard rush, for Jahmyr Gibbs. But again, official picks will be on the Instagram. On the other side, the Detroit defense, there are some data outliers. 6th most pass attempts allowed, 9th most pass yards allowed. They're very good against the run. The Bills are going to have to throw the football. 2nd most receiving yards allowed, 2nd most receptions allowed, but the lowest tight end yard and reception numbers in the NFL. They run the most man in the NFL as well, Detroit. Now, Allen's very good against man, actually better against man in terms of fantasy points per dropback than he is against zone. But the pass catchers against man for the Bills get a little hazy because in terms of target rate, how often they're being targeted when they're on the field, Amari Cooper is number 1. But Keon Coleman's back this week. He missed a few games prior, and he has more yards per out run than Amari Cooper. Cooper's got 1.84 yards per out run against man. Coleman's got 2.77. Now, target rate, Dalton Kincaid, questionable, probably going to play. He's a slot guy, but he also runs inline tight end routes, so it's tough to gauge there because the Lions are being targeted in the slot at the 4th highest rate and the inline tight end spot at the 25th highest rate. So I'm staying away from Kincaid. But Khalil Shakir also has 12 receptions against man, 1.77 yards per out run. He's a very interesting one. Now, in terms of where the Bills like to throw the football, because the Lions are being targeted out wide and in the slot at the 4th highest rate each. The Bills throw in the slot comparatively at a higher percentage. Now, in the slot, Khalil Shakir is 2.37 yards per out run, which is a lot better than Cooper out wide at 1.81 and Coleman out wide at 2.06. So it's between Cooper, Coleman, and Shakir. Now, I'll ask you guys, if you look at the Buffalo Bills offense, Do you trust any pass catcher to have 8+ catches? Probably not, right? Would you rather then take the chance on a longest reception or overall receiving yards if the volume's not going to be there? Probably longest reception, right? That was our big thing again against the Lions Thursday Night Football 2 weeks ago. Christian Watson, longest reception. Boom, one play down the sideline, 60-something yard reception. Obviously, his receiving yards hit on that too, but 60-something yard reception. If I had to guess, a chunk play long reception would probably lean Amari Cooper before anybody else. But Keon Coleman is back. Sounds like he's back. Khalil Shakir has a good amount of yards per route run. And Curtis Samuel's another very interesting one too, because he's still got 11 targets, 8 receptions, 1.79 yards per route run from the slot. So he is still a very important aspect of that pass offense. But that's what we got for game 2. It's David Montgomery receiving yards. I like that a lot. Jahmyr Gibbs, explosive run, long run. And then I'm going to go Amari Cooper, longest catch for right now. I low-key like the longest catch for all 3 of those guys. But if I had to pick one explosive, I'm going Amari Cooper. Game number 3, wardrobe change, as you can see. Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. Now, this is a very tough game, and I'm going to call some bluffs here with the rush data because you look at the running back numbers overall for these teams. Pittsburgh Steelers, 27th fewest attempts, 27th fewest yards. Philadelphia Eagles, 26th fewest attempts, 25th fewest yards. We can pull up some data for you here as well. Basic rushing, right? Rush yards per carry. You can see Pittsburgh Steelers right there, Philadelphia Eagles right there. Both top 10 defensively. Rush yards per game. We got the Philadelphia Eagles right there and the Pittsburgh Steelers right there. Both, again, defensively, top 10. Now, you dive a little deeper into that data, though. Pittsburgh Steelers, defensively, are giving up the most, nobody worse, the most yards per carry against zone scheme runs. Philadelphia has the 6th most zone attempts per game and the 3rd most yards per carry on those zone scheme runs in the NFL. Now, explosive run percentage, Pittsburgh's very good defensively. Philadelphia's very good offensively. So I don't know if Saquon breaking off a big run is the way to go. But I don't hate Saquon rushing yards in what's going to be a close game. On the other side, same exact thing. Philadelphia giving up the 9th most zone yards per carry. Pittsburgh has the 3rd highest zone run percentage in the NFL. They're pretty average in terms of yards per carry, but they run it a lot. Going to be a close game. Najee attempts, maybe Saquon attempts on the other side. Let's dive a little deeper, though, because there are some other outliers we can look at now. Pittsburgh defensively, 7th most pass attempts and the 14th most pass yards. So if you're going to beat them, you're going to have to throw it through the air. At least that's what most teams have had to do. Wide receiver-wise, though, it's important you note this disparity. 24th in receptions allowed, so not a ton of receptions, but 17th, so middle of the pack in terms of overall yards allowed to receivers. What does that mean? Yards take precedent over catches for receivers. They play the 12th most man coverage in the NFL. If you've seen any of my Eagles breakdowns, you know we're going to lean there. Now, tight ends, Pittsburgh, 7th most receptions, but 15th most yards. So if you want to lean into Grant Calcaterra, go ahead. Be my guest. We'll talk about the man data there, but I don't love it. If you're going to do it, do catches before you do yards. And then on the other side, Philadelphia, they are giving up the 18th most pass attempts, but the 31st most yards. Teams are not successful against them. 23rd most receptions, 31st yards in terms of receivers, 26th most receptions, and 28th most receptions in terms of tight ends. There's really not a ton of lean there, but the coverage data is going to help us out a ton on both sides. So, like I said, Pittsburgh played 12th most man in the NFL. They also have the highest middle field closed rate. So a lot of cover 3 and a lot of cover 1. Now, Hurts compared to man and zone, more fantasy points per drop back against man. Compared to middle field closed, middle field open, more fantasy points per drop back against middle field closed. So he plays better against the Steelers' coverages. A.J. Brown, 4.47. That is such a ridiculous number. 4.47 yards per out run against man coverage. Everybody freaking out about A.J. Brown. Look, guys, I get it. I understand what you're saying. They don't see eye to eye. They're not on the same page, whatever you got to say. He will have a decent amount of volume, and to me, the longest reception pick here is the way to go. You saw last week, big reception for Jerry Jeudy, big reception for Michael Woods, and we can look at some game logs here. Receivers against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Come on, here we go. That's Philadelphia Eagles. Receivers against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Jamar Chase had a big catch. T. Higgins had a big catch. Jerry Jeudy had a couple, not long catches, but a decent amount of catches in the snow there, right? Ravens, I'm going to throw out the window. But Terry McLaurin, big catch in that game. Darius Slayton, big catch in that Steelers game. Malik Neighbors played pretty well, had plenty of opportunities to have big catches in that game. Garrett Wilson, one long catch in that game. Like, there are plenty of opportunities in terms of big play ability against this Pittsburgh Steelers team. It's not going to be a ton of volume. A.J. Brown's not going to catch 10 passes. He will have one big catch, though, especially against man. That number 4.47, guys, is so ridiculous. So ridiculous when you look at yards per out run against man. And to me, if the Steelers are going to load the box, which most middle field close usually means you load the box, A.J. Brown's going to have opportunities one-on-one. That's the reality. He's going to have opportunities one-on-one. They're going to heighten in on Saquon a little bit. That's why I'm not super confident in the rush yards. But you look at the target rates, the Pittsburgh Steelers defensively pretty balanced in terms of where they allow targets. But the Eagles, 27th in slot target rate, 17th in inline target rate, 21st in backfield rate. Out wide, which is where A.J. Brown runs the vast majority of his routes from, second highest rate. They're throwing the football out wide. A.J. Brown is going to get opportunities. Longest catch for A.J. Brown, I think, is the best way to go. Interesting, we talked about Grant Calcaterra very, very briefly because Dallas Goedert, and I do think this number was inflated because of that big catch he had against the Saints, if you remember that. 11 catches on 13 targets against man, 3.33 yards per out run. So maybe Grant Calcaterra gets some more options or more opportunities in the pass game, but I'm not going to lean into that. In terms of next guy yards per out run is actually Saquon before it's Devontae Smith. Smith's got 13 on 19 targets, a 1.68 yards per out run against man. Saquon's got a 2.09. A.J. Brown, not going to overthink it on that side. A.J. Brown. On the other side, though, this is where you guys, this is the most in-depth I've had to go for really any breakdown here. You looked at the target rates for the Steelers offensively and the Eagles defensively. Out wide, Eagles are giving up targets at the 26th highest rate, and the Steelers are throwing out wide the 21st highest rate. And this was a majority with George Pickens. George Pickens probably not going to play. In the slot, Eagles are giving up a good amount of targets, but the Steelers really aren't throwing it. They're 28th highest in the league. Inline tight end spot, Eagles are tied for 20th, so they're just below average. Steelers throwing at the 8th highest rate. Backfield, Eagles above average, 12th highest. Steelers 3rd highest. So I looked into some data here, and we can go look at some pass numbers as well, just overall. Passing defense, Eagles 3rd fewest pass yards per game in terms of completion percentage, 5th fewest completion percentage, and you can go look at the offense on the other side. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they are not throwing the ball a ton. They're not. Pittsburgh Steelers pass yards per game, 21st in the NFL. They're efficient at least, 65.2%. That's slightly above average. But I want to go look at some game logs here because there are a few games where the Pittsburgh Steelers have played teams that mimic what the Eagles do defensively. And that is what I wanted to look at. The tight end position and the running back position against teams that mimic what they do defensively. Now, I am very fascinated in Jaylen Warren because he's looked really good all year. And I think this is another game very comparable to the Browns game where it's close. You don't have to get out of your shell. You can run the ball as much as you want. The Philadelphia Eagles run the most cover 6 in the league, but they're also top 10 in cover 4. They're super balanced in what they do defensively with zone man and middle field close, middle field open, but top 10 in cover 4, the most cover 6. I went through every game log of any time the Steelers have played a team that's either top half in the NFL in cover 4 or cover 6 or both. Jaylen Warren in those games. The Jets game, 2 for 15. The Giants game, 2. This is just receiving, 2 for 13. The Ravens game, 4 for 27. Cincinnati, 4 for 55. Denver, 2 for 19. Then there was Dallas. He didn't play. In those games, right now he's projected 18 receiving yards. He's had 18 receiving yards 3 of 5 times. Now, you look at Jaylen Warren additionally, 70.1% of his run attempts are coming on the zone scheme runs. What I say at the very beginning of this breakdown, Philadelphia is giving up the 9th most yards per carry in those zone scheme runs. Pittsburgh's running a lot of zone scheme runs. Probably not going to get out of their shell this game. I think Jaylen Warren, if you had to pick something on this side, if you had to, I'm not going to, had to, Jaylen Warren's scrimmage yards is fascinating to me. I really like it. Now, Najee's a little more volatile because he's had some really good receiving games against these types of teams. 3 for 17, 4 for 30, 6 for 54, 2 for 35. But then he played the Jets and he had no catches. Played Denver, he had a catch for 5 yards. I can't trust that. Now, without George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth is interesting because his projection right now, I believe it's 34 receiving yards. Had 51, 68, and 39 against these defenses. But he also had a 2-catch for 19-yard game, a 2-catch for 14-yard game. And again, those are all with Pickens in the lineup. Pickens is not in the lineup now. I think if I have to do anything, it's either Freiermuth yards or Jaylen Warren's scrimmage. Jaylen Warren's scrimmage, right? I looked, it was like 40-something scrimmage yards. I don't mind that. I really don't. High 40s, I don't mind. Jaylen Warren, scrimmage. Pat Freiermuth receiving, I guess. And then A.J. Brown, longest reception on the other side, I think is the way to go. But let's move into this fourth game, the Sunday Night Football game, Green Bay versus Seattle. If you guys are enjoying this video and you've made it, we're about a little over halfway through. Make sure you leave a like if you've enjoyed it so far. Comment any picks you like or don't like. But let's keep going with this Green Bay-Seattle game. Now, important info here. Green Bay is with Romeo Doubs. Seattle Seahawks likely without Kenneth Walker, and that is huge for this matchup. We talked about it very briefly when we talked about the Lions-Bills game. Green Bay giving up the 4th most receiving yards and 6th most receptions to opposing running backs. Now, they're also giving up a good amount of tight end yards, 7th most tight end yards, tied 3rd most tight end receptions, but that's really it. They're giving up a fair amount of pass attempts, 14th in pass attempts, 12th in yards, nothing really to wide receivers, more receptions than yards, but 29th in terms of overall yards given up to wide receivers. Like we talked about, they play the most zone and the most middle field open in the – or sorry, more middle field open than middle field closed, the 4th most zone, though. In terms of target rate, every active player, you know who's number 1? Zach Charbonnet against zone. Zach Charbonnet. 29 targets, 26 catches, 1.9 yards per route run. Now, Green Bay is pretty good against the run, so I'm not going to lean into that. Zach Charbonnet receiving, I would almost blindly just go with it. They are giving up, Green Bay, targets to the backfield at the 2nd highest rate. Seattle's already thrown to the backfield at the 9th highest rate. That is a perfect marriage. But there's another perfect marriage here. JSN has more receptions against zone than DK does. It's pretty comparable in terms of targets, but more receptions for JSN. Green Bay is being targeted in the slot at the 5th highest rate. Seattle's thrown in the slot at the 3rd highest rate, and JSN is the slot guy. Now, I talked about the receiver numbers here. Green Bay is giving up more receptions comparatively than they are yards, so I would go JSN catches if I win anything. But I like JSN. I do. I think this could be a 7-8 catch game, and we can go look at some JSN games when he's had to play very similar offensive styles. Defensive styles, and he's done pretty well. You go look here. JSN against we'll start back here. New England Patriots, who are being targeted in the slot a ton. There you go, 12 for 117. Detroit earlier on in the year, super heavy slot targeted team, 8 for 51. Let's see here. San Francisco, no. Buffalo, perfect. We just talked about Buffalo, 6 for 69. Rams is interesting because they throw a ton at you, but a balanced team, 7 for 180 there. That was without DK Metcalf, if I remember correctly. Not really San Francisco. Arizona, though, 6 for 77 and a touchdown. Jets played a ton of man, so those were big plays like that. But Arizona last week, decently heavy slot team, balanced zone man team, 5 for 82. JSN, again, catches more prominent than yards here. But because of what they allow, because of what Green Bay allows to slot wide receivers, I like JSN. And we can go back to some of the game logs against here for the Green Bay Packers, and we can go look at some of the wide receiver production, or really wide receiver and tight end production from the slot. I know Amon-Ra didn't get targeted a ton last week, but he still had 5 catches. Tyreek Hill had 6. In terms of the 49ers, Kittle, who's their main slot guy, had 6 for 82. Going back up here, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore balanced out. Keenan Allen's mainly their slot guy, not a huge game there. But Amon-Ra had 7 earlier on when they played. I don't believe Evan Engram played. Oh, no, he did. Okay, 4 for 36, but Bretton Strange still had 5 for 39 in the slot against these guys. Trey McBride is another big one, 8 for 96 when they played. Stephon Diggs was the number one slot guy when he was healthy, 5 catches there. If I remember correct, was that the game he got hurt? I don't remember. But the bottom line is the slot guys will produce more than the out wide guys. And if you're looking at this offense for Seattle, it's DK or it's JSN. If you want to lean catches before you lean yards, which is exactly what the numbers suggest, you go JSN beforehand. I like JSN catches, but Zach Charbonnet receiving is the best pick on that side. Now, on the other side, not a ton of data outliers here, but Seattle plays the 10th most man-to-man in the NFL. It's tough because they're giving up the 25th most yards, but the 15th most receptions. Tight end spot, though. 11th most yards given up, 7th most receptions. Okay, you look at that. Well, Tucker Kraft is not good against man. Let's push that to the side. Quarterback overall, 11th most attempts, 19th most yards. Oh, maybe Jordan Love will throw the football more. Running backs, 13th most attempts, 8th most yards. They're struggling against the run. There really is no lean in terms of target rate, man-to-man beater, anything that I feel really confident in, truthfully. But anytime the Green Bay Packers are going to get a team that plays a lot of man, Christian Watson is going to get chances down the field. We were on it 2 Thursday nights ago against the Detroit Lions, had a huge catch. Chicago, very similar situation. He had multiple 40-yard catches in that game. Christian Watson, longest reception. Anytime you play a top 10 man team is always going to be my go-to. 3.69 yards per out run against man, guys. That's ridiculous. Most targets on the team against man as well, regardless of where he lines up. He'll line up in the slot a little bit too, but mainly out wide. He's going to get at least a couple chances down the field. And I think this is going to be a close game. They're going to have to throw the football down the field if they want a chance to win this football game. I think Watson longest reception is where you go on that side if you have to go anywhere. Unless you want to lean into Jaden Reed. You want to lean in? I don't want to lean into Jaden Reed again after last week. Romeo Doubs, again, is back. Should take some action away. But 1 reception. All it takes is 1 with Christian Watson. All it takes is 1 with A.J. Brown. Somebody else, too. Jahmyr Gibbs, longest rush. All it takes is 1 with Jahmyr Gibbs. You don't have to worry about a ton of volume for these guys in order for them to produce. So those are the 4 big game breakdowns. Let's get into the other games. I'll give you guys the game. I'll give you the spread. And I'll give you any information that I like for players. Any picks that I got in regards to the spread. And we will start with Dallas, Carolina. Carolina is 3 points favorites here. I like Rico Dowdle rushing, and I like Chuba receiving more than rushing, but Chuba scrimmage yards. I'm not picking either side here, to be honest with you guys. I think this is truly a hungry dog, runs faster game with Dallas, but Carolina's playing well, so I'm going to stay away. Dowdle should get some good production on the ground. Carolina's bottom 10 in terms of rush yards given up. Dallas is bottom 10 in terms of receiving yards given up, 2 running backs, but also bottom half in rush yards. So I do like Chuba rush receiving. I like Dowdle receiving. Kansas City at Cleveland. Kansas City -4. I'm going Kansas City -4. Not going to think about that. No Cedric Wilson. Doesn't seem like David Njoku's playing. Elijah Moore, in terms of slot target rate, what Kansas City does coverage-wise, he is the guy. They run a lot of man. He's the guy against man. Again, no Cedric Tillman there. Judy's always a good one. Always good, especially with Jameis playing, especially against man. The Browns are going to play a lot of man, too, and they're without Greg Newsome, though. That's where I think a Xavier Worthy longest reception could be a good play. But here it's, unfortunately, I know you see the flag in the back. It's Chiefs -4, and it's Elijah Moore. Jets at Jacksonville. Jacksonville is a 3.5-point underdog. Brian Thomas Jr. against man is my favorite lean here. He's very good against man, even if Mac Jones is the quarterback, very good against man. Garrett Wilson's better against man in terms of yards per out run. These are 2 top 5 man teams in the NFL as well. Devontae Adams is still pretty good here. Sounds like Breece Hall is playing in this game. I think the Jets win, but they just haven't shown me enough to make me believe they can cover 4 points. They haven't shown me enough. So I'm not going to stay on either side here. Wilson receiving, Brian Thomas Jr. receiving, and maybe if you want to sprinkle on Adams. Washington, New Orleans. Washington 7.5-point favorites here. I'm going to go Washington -7.5 off a bye. The closest margin of loss for the Saints without Derek Carr was 18 points. No Derek Carr, no Taysom Hill. Jake Haener, I believe this is his first career start. I'm going to go Washington. They're getting Marshawn Lattimore. I think they're going to blow him out, to be honest with you. Interesting to note here, though. Saints are a pretty man-heavy team. Noah Brown is done for the year. Terry McLaurin's obviously a good option against man. He has a good amount of yards per out run, like pretty efficient. But Diami Brown is the most yards per out run against man. He had 4 for 35 last game. I like him in terms of overall receiving yards. And I actually pull up the projection right now so we have it. But Diami Brown receiving yards is a very, very fascinating pick for me. I think it could come on one play, to be honest with you. And I'll get the exact number for you guys here in a second. 30 receiving yards. Like, that could happen on one play. I like Diami Brown. Baltimore at the Giants. Baltimore 16-point favorites. That's a lot of points. I'm not going to touch either side. It's still an NFL game. Derrick Henry rushing, love it. Malik Nabers receiving, love it. Don't have to think too much about that. Other side, other games. Cincinnati at Tennessee. Cincinnati is a 5-point favorite here. I'm not going to be on either side here. Like, as much as I want to love, I think the Bengals win. As much as I want to lean into the Bengals here, I don't know if I can trust their defense. Without L'Jarius Sneed, though, very interesting to note, Tennessee runs the second most zone in the NFL and targeted out wide at the 9th highest rate. Jamar Chase plays into the hand of both of those. But Chase Brown against zone receiving is always a good option. We saw it last week against Dallas. They're a little more zone heavy, and Chase Brown had a very good game through the air. New England at Arizona. Arizona 6-point favorites here. New England runs the third most man. Marv is the guy against man, but he may get the Christian Gonzalez shadow. So I don't know how I feel about that. But they are giving up the 7th most rush yards in the NFL. I think James Conner has a good game. I think Arizona takes care of business. I'm not going to be on either side here, to be honest with you, but I think Arizona will win this football game. Indy at Denver. I'm very close to going Denver -4. Again, that's why you guys follow the socials below. Check that out. But Denver's going to win the game. Josh Downs and A.D. Mitchell versus man. Very, very big. Surtain shadow. Probably going to go to Michael Pittman. Downs in the slot. I like it. Mitchell on number 2. I don't know if Riley Moss is playing or not. But Mitchell, like him. Longest reception for Mitchell, but yards for Downs. Colts run the second most zone in the NFL. Troy Franklin is the guy against zone for Denver. Cortland Sutton's a close number 2, so I do like Cortland Sutton. But Indy's run defense is also not very good. I don't know if you want to lean into Javonte Williams rush yards. Everything points Denver, but I don't know. Something about this Colts team, something about it makes me think they're going to make a late season push. AR's looking better. Something about them. I don't know. Final game, Tampa Bay, Los Angeles. Los Angeles is 3-point favorites. I'm going to go Tampa +3. Chargers are banged up, man. Banged up. Even if Mike Evans doesn't play, Tampa has shown they can compete with elite teams without that number 1 receiver. Chargers play a lot of zone. Cade Otton, Mike Evans, both very good against zone, but the running backs have a very, very prominent role against zone. Only thing is, Chargers are being targeted out wide against zone, or out wide in general at a very high rate. Mike Evans is good against zone, so you hope Mike Evans plays for the props, but I do like Tampa +3 here. Tampa Bay, ton of zone. I think the most in the NFL. Will Dissly is the guy against zone for the Chargers. That is everything I got for the games on Sunday, guys. There will be a full Monday Night Football breakdown, so make sure you subscribe and turn your notifications on to get that. It'll be out at Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern. But if you guys enjoyed this breakdown, if you like this information, I appreciate you watching. Make sure you leave a like on this video. Let me know what you like. Let me know what picks you're riding, anything else. God bless you guys. We'll see you next time. Enjoy your Sunday.